Hello and welcome to OverShadow ShadowCast with your host Thomas Anderson. It's my turn this week. Very excited. So first of all, we're going to start with that's an extremely excited bird. Anyway, we're going to talk about two of the games that I've been playing this week. That's what I've been playing because I finished these. So the first one was Lego City Undercover. I think I've spoken about it before. I really enjoyed Lego City Undercover. It's your basic Lego game. You know, destroying things, building things, playing through a story, and most of which are, Lego games are usually based on a movie series or something like that. But in this case, it's its own creation. You are a police officer who can go undercover, or in the mechanics of the game, that basically means that you change your clothes into a disguise. You run around collecting studs to pay for things like you do normally, but you're also able to collect bricks from things that you destroy so that you can create super builds, much larger than the normal small builds. And that plays into the fact that the game is a sandbox open worldy type game where you can drive around basically to do whatever you want. And so you can actually build super builds like ramps and drive cars up them and stuff like that. There's also a lot of exploration that you can do, climbing things basically, a bit like Assassin's Creed in a weird way. There's also the fact that the disguises that I mentioned have different abilities. So in missions and in exploration, you have different characters can do different things, and you need to unlock them all to be able to do everything in the world. But it all plays together very nicely. My initial interest in the game was actually the story. I think I played it was on Game Pass for a wee while, and I played it and I really liked it, so I got it when it was on sale. But my initial pull into it was the story, because I actually did feel a want to move from mission to mission. I really did enjoy that. It sort of tailed off a wee bit in the middle because I stopped playing it for a wee while because of other things I had to do. But when I went back, it was still there, and I kept enjoying doing the missions. It does get a little bit so-so, but the very last mission is absolutely fantastic. It's epic is really the only word for it, and the fact that you can replay the missions means I get to go back and do that as often as I want. So I just think that because it's a Lego game, it just lets itself be silly, which means that it's not actually limited by anything. So while you see some aspects of the story coming, because it is designed to be kid friendly, they're not blatantly obvious, and it other aspects are completely out of the blue because it just allows itself to do whatever it wants. So I really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I would recommend you play it. I know police officers aren't all the rage right now, but I'd recommend you play it because it is a lot of fun. So the other game that I was playing Gears of War 4 co-op, and I'd never played Gears of War. Neither of us had played Gears of War 4 before, but we've played through all the previous ones, and I have to say that I found the gameplay mechanics are as good as they've ever been, if not better. For 4, they're really, really good and enjoyable. I really liked it, and it looks amazing. The game looks amazing, but it's probably the right length. But I found two real issues with it, which was that the story writing was just a bit rubbish. Like especially the communication between the characters was just every now and again you just want to do yourself in because it was so bad. And the story itself, it's very shallow. They don't go into any great depth with it, not in terms of how it affects you, but they don't really build the world up, because it's based years after the events of 3, and they try and keep you away from what you actually want to see because it looks like they haven't actually written it yet, basically. So you don't really know what the world looks like. You're just moving around very reasonably familiar scenes, and it's just not. That's not as fun. You really wanted to see some stuff, and so the fact you don't get to see it is for me disappointing. I like lore and background stuff, and I just don't feel like they actually. The game's just a bit ridiculous in its premise, to be honest, because they don't explain anything, so you can't really see how they've got there. The other problem is the difficulty level, and I'm sure this was the same in previous Gears, but Insanity's just silly. It's not fun. You poke your head up and it gets blown off within 2 seconds. It's just not enjoyable. So I decided, along with the person I was playing with, that the best thing that we could do would be to cut it to hardcore. It's just not. It's more fun that way. The down but not out mechanic of Gears is fun. It's still a challenge. You still have to work hard to be able to do it, but it's not tediously difficult. I mean, I think half of the first act took us, along with the prologue, obviously, it took us like 3 or 4 hours. And that's just not supposed to happen. So it shouldn't be designed that way. So and then we cut it to hardcore and we started a much better flow. The game doesn't flow properly if you're on too high a difficulty to begin with. It's really designed for you playing it through after you've already played it. So I don't know why in previous games they locked off insanity, so you couldn't play the hardest difficulty straight away. You had to complete the game first. They should have done the same with 4. And when it comes to the actual difficulty of 4, personally, I think it's too hard. It's not fun. Even though the hardest difficulty should be hard, it shouldn't be silly. They've got Iron Man mode and they've got another difficulty setting called Inconceivable. There's no need for insanity to be this silly. I'd either include the down but not out, or I would take out the down but not out, but make it as difficult to survive as they do in hardcore. I think that would have been a better balance. This just doesn't make sense for me, so I wouldn't recommend playing it on insanity. It actually sort of drains the fun out of the game. As it was, we played it through on hardcore, really enjoyed it, and I'd definitely recommend it as part of the games. If you're not a Gears fan, don't start with 4, but if you've played the others, I would play 4, because I've played... we've started 5 now. We've played the first couple of chapters in 5, and it does seem like 4 leads into 5 quite nicely, so I would definitely go that way about it. I don't recommend starting with 4, but if you do play through the games, I don't recommend skipping any of them either. So yeah, they seem to be using, with Gears of War 5, they seem to be using the history of all the different games to make 5, and they're building the world. You really get to see stuff. And I would just like to say that I'm really excited for it as a lore person, like I said, and I really do recommend that that you look at 5. Oh, pardon me, that you look at 5, because it does look really, really good, and the mechanics of the gameplay, they're still really good. They seem to have actually made a few changes that make it even better. Yeah, I would recommend it. It seems like a lot of fun. But I'll keep you posted on that as we play through it. So that's all I've been playing at the minute. So we'll move on to, or at least that's what I've completed this week. So what we'll move on to now is, or that's what I've completed since we last spoke. We'll move on to the stories that I've decided we're going to talk about today. So they're actually quite short little things, but they're things that just caught my interest, so I thought I'd share them. Firstly, I've heard that Fallout is getting its own television show. That's interesting. Be interesting to see what it's about. Also, I assume it's not Fallout 76 pre-patch or pre-expansion, because if it is, there'd be no people in it. So I don't know how that would work. They have to be careful how they do that, but there's a lot of lore to Fallout, so they easily could make a TV show of it. They just don't want to put anything in that then causes a problem for future games. So they would probably want to do what they do with the games, pick an area of the United States and tell a story about how the people who live there fix that area, basically. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. I think they'll probably make it so that you can follow it even if you're not a gamer, although it's a pretty difficult premise to get across, and yeah, that pilot's going to have to be good. But I've only heard this from a few places, so I'll need to double check it. But if that's true, that looks interesting. So the next story, it's 2 stories that I've got combined. So the House of Lords in the United Kingdom has decreed that loot box mechanics and things like that in games are gambling. If it looks like gambling and seems like gambling, it's gambling and should be treated as gambling. Now, unfortunately, the House of Lords are able to make recommendations, but they're not actually able to pass laws because they're not elected. They're involved in the passing of laws, but they're not able to do it by themselves. That's the House of Commons. So it will be interesting to see how that recommendation is actually taken. But it is a good step in the right direction. If even those people who most consider them to be out of touch are able to see this, then that bodes quite well. And the against banning of loot boxes or the regulation of loot boxes are actually pretty thin in the ground and not very good, so it's a good step in the right direction. I mean, talking about the kind of companies that will fight back against things like that, there was a pre-order trailer released for WWE 2K Battlegrounds. I think it's a new wrestling game coming out soon, and people have noticed that there is a mouse cursor present in the trailer. Now that's a pretty big company that makes that game. It's a pretty big thing. It makes a lot of money, especially in America. And somebody's released a trailer with a mouse cursor still in it. Now I've accidentally recorded a video where my mouse cursor appeared, but I don't know how a multi-billion-dollar company would have a look at that and pass through several layers of checks and not notice. And I think that's because they don't care. They make most of their money from loot box mechanics. They don't really need the game to look good. They just need to get a few million types of people to buy it, and they will hand over all their money. So if you're a real gamer, a ban on loot box mechanics, or at least regulation, is something you'd look forward to. I mean, I think there's ways to do it which work. Like, personally, I actually haven't that bothered about Halo 5's mechanics, but I don't like this current thing, especially when it comes to like FIFA or things like that, FIFA Ultimate Team. I don't like that because the grind is ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, you can't actually unlock everything in Halo 5 unless you actually get to level 152, which is the maximum multiplayer rank, because that's only, some things are only unlocked by getting to 152. So yeah, and it's not really made that much easier. You still have to do the fights. So yeah, it's just an example of what's happening with these companies now. Last little story is something that I've spoken about before and I really like. It's Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, the release of Kingdoms of Amalur, the remaster. So there's been a month's delay to the release. I think that's just pretty standard right now because of COVID, because of the pandemic. But they have released information now with a new trailer. It's not gameplay, it's just cinematic, but they have released new informations that there will be an expansion, at least one, there might be more added to Reckoning. It's not known yet whether or not that expansion will be free. It's probably most likely to cost money, but we don't know that for sure yet. What we do know is that at the very least, versions of the game which include the expansion, and possibly every version of the game, is not currently available for pre-order because THQ Nordic are basically admitting that they haven't released enough information about it yet, so to try and get people to buy the different versions of it wouldn't really be fair. So I wanted to let you know that there's a delay of about a month, that there are expansions to it, which is quite good. Currently we don't really know how that expansion system is going to work financially. When it comes to the actual expansions themselves, there's some people saying that Kingdoms of Amalur, at about 134 hours it took me to complete first time round, and I didn't play the DLC before, are saying that the game's already big enough, and a lot of the quests are very just do here and fetch this, or do here and go here, and fetch this, or go here and kill that thing, and it's all very same. But that's actually a good thing, because if they start adding expansions and those expansions bring different types of things in, if you feel yourself having to do the same thing over and over again, you can just alternate what you're doing because you won't have to do everything. So If you just love the game and want to do as much as possible, it's great. If you found some of it to be very samey, you've now got more things you can vary it up with. Because the combat system was pretty good in the original game. It was actually fantastic. It was really where the real great depth of the game was. That's where its success was. That's where its strength was. So maybe the team at THQ have decided, let's try and build up around that, because that's working fine. So it's, yeah, I'm telling you that story because I'm really excited for it and I want everybody else to be too. So I recommend that game too. I've played it before. I recommend it to people. I think it gets a bad rap, but it's fantastic. So yeah, and it sold really well. The company went bankrupt because they spent too much money making it, not because the game wasn't good enough to sell. It just, they couldn't sell that many copies because they released it about the same time as Skyrim. There's only so many copies of a game you can sell. There's only so many people on the planet, and then so many people who can buy it. And I think in this instance, they just didn't take that into account properly. Was it Big 3H Studios, but or 3H Studios, but THQ know what they're doing, and that previous investment in the game's already there, so they can just benefit from that without needing to worry about it. So I'm really glad to see that Kingdoms of Amalur finally is getting the treatment that it deserves. So that's everything I've got for this week. I think it might be me again next week. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe, and you can leave a comment underneath. Click the notification bell if you subscribe so that you can get warned and alerted whenever we upload. And if you have anything you want to say, as I said, leave a comment. But if you can also contact us, if you don't want to leave a comment, at overshadow@shadowcast@gmail.com. Any comments are welcome. So I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.